Subhadip, tell us more.
Well, absolutely. Even yesterday during this time, we had mentioned BHEL and, the slew of order wins that the company was receiving. And yesterday, the company has received a very large order win. Remember, the stock is up almost 97% in the last 1 year. In just the last 2 weeks, the company has received 3 orders which are worth over 17,000 crore. The first order is from NTPC that we spoke about earlier. This is for 1.6 gigawatt thermal supercritical factory that the company would be setting up in Lara in Chhattisgarh. And the likely size of the order as per Antique is in the range of 11 to 12,000 crore rupees. Remember, in FY24, the company has already booked orders of over 35,000 crore. And that the order book at the end of Q1, barring these orders, was well in excess of 1 lakh crore. The second order that the company received was for NHPC. The value of the order was over 2,200 crore and also received an order in excess of 4,000 crore. Now, this is for Mahan Thermal Power Project. Now, what is in the pipeline going forward? Remember, BHEL still receives close to 85% from its business from the power sector as per Nuvama. And Nuvama states that there is still potential order flows from NTPC to the tune of 4 to 5 gigawatt that is still yet to come out. And the other one is both, NLC India, Naval Lignite, as well as Coal India. Both of them have outlined plans. So BHEL still stands to garner a few orders from these companies as well.
Okay, in fact, thanks for giving us that cue, because we have Subhadip Mitra, the Executive Director of Nuvama Institutional Equities, who joins us now to discuss more on these order wins and, the kind of revival that we've seen in the thermal power story, right? The kind of orders that are coming through, this NTPC order for BHEL as well. Thanks a lot, Subhadip, for joining in. The only problem is that the stock has rallied a whole lot. I mean, we were discussing it a while back. It's been, what, a 50-60% rally in the last 12 months. For BHEL particularly. In case someone has missed out on this rally, is there more to go? And fundamentally, how are you looking at it? NTPC and BHEL both.
Good morning, and thank you for having me on the show. So I think the way the power story is panning out is that from a power surplus scenario is what we have seen, let's say, over the last 5 to 7 years, which is the reason we haven't really added as a nation too much of thermal capacity. And that was reflecting in the exchange prices being, at bottom levels of 2.5, 3. Now, if I take the exchange prices as a barometer of power deficit, I think it's clearly showing where we are headed, right? So from a power surplus scenario, we seem to be headed more towards a power deficit scenario. I believe we hit about a 233 gigawatt of peak demand just about a day back. And the deficit story is now slowly panning out. Right now, it's more of peak deficits sporadically coming during peak seasons or certain days of the year. But if we do not add ample capacity, be it on the renewable side or on the thermal side, effectively in the next 2 to 3 years, we could be headed for, very steep deficits. And I think that is the scenario that the government has already taken into consideration. You already have the National Electricity Plan, which the CEA has come out with just about a few months back. It clearly outlines that there are large capacity additions that are being planned. So while on the renewable side, the headline number is maybe 40 to 50 gigawatt of renewable capacity addition every year, on the thermal side as well, the number could be anywhere between 5 to 7 gigawatt of fresh tendering. That is already planned. I think there is a 24 gigawatt tendering number of fresh thermal capacities that's already been listed out in the NEP. My understanding is there is an upside to this number, given that the renewable story is still to pick up and reach that 50 gigawatt per annum kind of number. So we may get there probably over the next couple of years. But given that there is a slow start and deficit seems to be staring us in the face, I think the thermal story is coming back.
Subhadip, hi, morning. So 30 odd renewable for
around
renewable every year, right?
Yeah.
And on the thermal side, over the next few years, I mean, annually, what should we expect? You said
annually the number should be somewhere between 5 and 7 gigawatt of fresh tendering.
Okay, of fresh tendering. The announcement yesterday, is that coming after a long time? I mean, for a very large project? When is the last time we heard something like that?
I think the last time we would have heard, so you had one more order that had come in last year from NTPC. And right now, what we understand from NTPC also is NTPC is looking at ordering out anywhere between 5 to 6 gigawatts of incremental thermal orders, which includes this 1.6 that has come in now. So I think incrementally another 4.5 gigawatt of thermal ordering from NTPC alone could be expected in the next few months. And then there are talks about, Naval Lignite or Coal India all of these companies also have their own plans of adding maybe 1.5 to 2 gigawatts each. So if I look at maybe the next 12-month scenario, you could see an ordering pipeline that is close to 10 gigawatts.
So when you look at stocks, should one look at utilities which will order these out to be built? I mean these new capacities, or should we look at suppliers?
I think you should look at both. So which is the reason, I mean, we have a buy on both NTPC and BHEL. BHEL clearly from the perspective that the thermal revival story is going to lead to almost like a resurrection for this particular company, because 80-85% of the business still comes from power for BHEL. And that seems to be making a comeback.
Sure.
Right?
For
And
NTPC,
NTPC, yeah.
Sorry, I just had one more question on NTPC. I agree, on the business potential, the order wins, etc. But in NTPC, there's another trigger, right, which could be the renewables business IPO or even a potential stake sale, and that is something that the street is focusing on as well. Given all of that, with the 35% run-up that we've already seen in the stock in the last 6 months, do you think there's more to go?
You're absolutely right. I think where NTPC is concerned, it's finally now that the stock is trading at the fair value for only the thermal piece, which is doing fairly well. Now on the renewable side of the business, notably this is the largest renewable company in India in terms of pipeline. Right, they have a 20 gigawatt pipeline that's already in place in terms of signed PPAs, tie-ups, etc., which should see the light of the day over the next 2 to 3 years, and it's growing every year. Now, this entire piece, just like what we had seen for the Tata Power in terms of, value creation from the investment or the divestment in the renewable platform, NTPC platform, the divestment is expected again over the next, let's say, 12 to 18 months. And that can be a big value unlock.
Got it.
Just apart from NTPC and BHEL, any other stocks in your coverage universe where there are positive triggers and there's both valuation and growth upside?
So in terms of, so while we've talked about generation, we've talked about, the BTG side of the story in BHEL, I think transmission is the next big piece, right? So if there is so much of power capacity that's going to get added, it needs to flow through transmission lines. And we are again hearing of large capex that's happening on the transmission side of the story, 2.5 lakh crores of capex spread over the next 5 years. So we would peg, something like a KAC on the EPC side, where we are fairly positive, largely because they have roughly 40% of the business coming from India transmission, which at peak used to be close to 80%. And I think that's a directional story that's going to play out over there. There's a margin recovery story also that's on the anvil in that particular stock. Barring that, I would say, I think again on the transmission or even the railway supply side in terms of equipment, I think Siemens and Hitachi are the other two names that we remain positive on.
You don't track Suzlon or intend to start covering Suzlon, Subhadip, do you?
We don't have that name under coverage as yet.
Okay. Do you plan to? I mean, it used to be a big player on the wind side. For wind, I think it's about 10 gigawatt a year, the plan.
Right. So I think directionally, if I have to look at it, so while I do not cover Suzlon as of yet, I think directionally what you're looking at is clearly just like what you're seeing on the thermal side. And I said that, there is a story panning out on the renewable piece as well. So yes, wind is a big piece out there. 8 to 10 gigawatt of annual, ordering on wind is planned. And as of now, it seems like Suzlon is clearly one of the more dominant players. But as you would, well know, there are more players coming into the business. I mean, we've heard of Reliance coming in with their own manufacturing on the wind side. So I think the next 2 to 3 years should be positive, for most wind players.
Okay, thanks a lot for that. Well, we leave it at that. We have the markets that are going to open in just about 3-4 minutes. So appreciate your time here. Let's go across to Mitesh now to get the big call at 9:10. Mitesh.